I would not have believed that until I had clients whose husbands had visited prostitutes, and it wasn't any different compared to women whose husbands were, just into porn. And I put those in air quotes because it's just as devastating.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome to another episode of Coffee with the Couple Cure. I'm Jay Pyatt.
And I'm Lori. This season, we are covering betrayal. It's what we deal with in our day job. It's how we help couples. We help them after betrayal. And whatever the betrayal is, substitute that with the word porn because that's what we're going to be covering a lot of.
Right.
But first, we're just going to cover the basics. So I guess we'll just start. If you don't know our story, go back to season 1 of Coffee with a Couple Cure podcast and listen to episode 10. If you don't know if you can trust us, listen to episode 11, and that'll kind of give you some background information on us. If you don't think porn can be addictive, then go just Google "fight the new drug" and "misrepresenting science." The article is called Op-Ed, Who Exactly is Misrepresenting the Science of Pornography? And it was released late December 28th of 2016. It's an awesome web page that has not just its own listing of studies, but it's like listings of other websites that have 40 studies on it. Then another one has 20, then another one has 30. It's a very good
Package of information.
Yeah. So if you don't believe it can be addictive, then the science behind it is listed on that article.
Right. And if you have betrayed someone through some other means, like Lori was saying, pornography was just my story. Your story may be something else, but how that betrayal impacts the other person is pretty consistent regardless. And the means for rebuilding trust after that type of betrayal are pretty similar. So, stick around. Even if this isn't your story, you may pick up on something new that's helpful for you.
Mm-hmm. I do want to, I think that'll wait for another episode, so I'll just wait on that. What I wish I had known. I wish I'd have known I wasn't crazy. I wish I would have known how deeply this can impact women. What I've heard is, and this was from, we're up to now 5 therapists who have said this on separate occasions, that the women who come to them whose husbands have been involved in actual affairs don't act any more devastated than the women whose husbands had just been involved in pornography. You've probably heard me say this before, but I would not have believed that until I had clients whose husbands had visited prostitutes, and it wasn't any different. I was really surprised. I'd be like, oh my gosh, your husband did what? How are you not climbing the walls compared to, the women whose husbands were, just into porn? And I put those in air quotes because it's just as devastating.
Yeah. And I've seen that from the guy's side as well, that they have deep shame over all of it. They, for some of them, they have more resistance in giving up pornography than they do in prostitution, because one is truly illegal, at least here in where we live. Mm-hmm. But pornography has become so normalized that it's like, well, how could this possibly be a problem? And yet we've seen a number of people actually divorce over this topic.
Yeah.
So.
And one of the issues with, feeling like we're crazy is because there are a lot of messages out there that it's okay. It's, what are you making such a big deal out of it? Well, it's because he, at the altar, he was asked, will you forsake all others? And he agreed to that. But this is not forsaking all others. This is turning toward others.
Right.
It's kind of the difference between if our spouse went to a bar and drank where the same gender hung out, it was kind of a low key, no big deal. versus going to a bar and drinking and there are attractive members of the opposite sex there and it's kind of a party atmosphere. That's the difference between this and other addictions. It involves another woman. It involves other people outside of our relationship. I've had women come to me and just, I don't like this. You know, I would respond the way I typically respond, and they go, so I'm not crazy. And I mean, just the look in their eye is just like, so I'm not crazy? Well, you people listening to this, you can't see it, but on the video, I'm showing you that there's just this like, are you serious? I'm not crazy? Are you sure? Like, because I've been told that I'm making way too big of a deal of this. So that is one thing I wish I'd have known. I wish I would have known to be very careful about who I took this information to. Even when it comes to counselors or people who, you know, in the counseling role. Because there are two different main models that people in the helping community take. And one is the codependent model, which actually was written by men studying only men. So it works actually pretty well with the guys. With women, it doesn't work so well. So that's in general. But after betrayal, there's something else that happens that if you take the codependent approach, it can really damage her further. The other model I'm talking about is the trauma-based model, the betrayal trauma model, which is vastly different than a codependent model. Because the codependent model, it does make her feel like she's to blame somehow, which can keep her stuck. Because she'll go, okay, if I can do something about this pain, I'm going to do something. So I need to get rid of my codependency. Check. You know, let me work on that. But in the relationship, that will just cause her to spin her wheels because there's something else going on. It's not her codependency. And I've seen women do this over and over again. They work on their codependency. It doesn't eradicate the problem. Therefore, that means there's another issue going on. There's another issue that needs to be addressed. The issue with being careful about who you see, like, I don't know how often this happens, but it's often enough that there's a term for it, and that is called treatment induced trauma. And the problem with treatment induced trauma is she can't trust her husband, so she goes to somebody in the helping community, and then they put stuff on her or blame her and I've heard horror stories of what some women have been told from people, you know, trying to help. Most of the time, it's people who want the best for them, and they're coming from a genuine heart. But other times it's just like, does that counselor have his own issue with it? Because that's a harsh thing to say to a woman who's hurting. Anyway, so they go to somebody they think they can trust, and then they get, you know, something put on them, and so they're not safe there. That can re-traumatize them in a way that can cause like long-term damage because now nobody's safe. So I wish I would have known to look for a betrayal trauma trained person in the helping community because they take a completely different approach to her healing. Another thing I wish I would have known is he loved it and he hated it. And what I mean by this is I thought he just loved it. You know, I thought it was like so much better than me, and of course he wants to get away, you know, to that. There was a side of him that hated it too. I mean, when he said, you know, I couldn't look myself in the mirror anymore, I was like, well, that must have really been hard. I thought it was nothing but a party for you. Do you want to go into that at all?
Yeah, I just, when I would look at myself in the mirror, I saw a guy that I couldn't trust. I saw a guy that I did not respect. And the shame of what I was doing, the shame of my hidden life really came through in those moments. And there's a lot of self-loathing involved. There's a lot of self-hatred involved. That this thing that I kept turning to was something I really knew was awful, knew was damaging my marriage, and for some reason I couldn't let go of it.
Yeah. And I would think that would be really frustrating. It's like, I can't control myself around certain members of the opposite sex or certain people that I'm attracted to. While it releases feel-good chemicals when I look at them, I also kind of hate that I can't control this. I also kind of hate that I'm under the power of somebody else, so much so that I end up hating myself or really regretting my actions.
Yeah.
So, and we're only halfway through the list, so I think we'll cut here and then do another one just to keep these short.
All right.
All right, guys?
Yeah. So we will see you all on the next episode.
Mm-hmm.